I'm still getting used to coming on video, and I have not quite figured out how to start a video. Like, hey guys, welcome to my thoughts of the day. So the beginning is going to be awkward right now as I get used to being on the camera. Yeah, so I just was having all these thoughts, and so I'm going to say them now, and you're going to like it or not like it, and then we're all gonna go on our merry way. So basically I want to talk about liberating our inner child in relationship. And I hesitated to open up with saying inner child, because I know when people talk about inner child this and inner child that and inner child wounding and inner child healing, I'm kind of just like, shut up. Like, it's just overused. It doesn't really sound that interesting. Me personally, I don't know. It's not that compelling. But I'm going to define inner child here so that we can kind of know what I'm talking about. I'm also going to speak to this from a, I'm going to frame it from how men, how it may happen for men. Not that women don't experience this. I think just as a witness of men, or that I've experienced this in men, it's just easier for me to talk about or something. But okay, I'll get to it. So the way I'm defining inner child here today is a feeling that gets triggered or activated in a current relationship or a current present moment that isn't new. So it's not a new feeling. You felt it before sometime in your life. You've felt it in other situations, other circumstances, and with other people, whether it be friends, other partners, parents, whatever. On some level, you have felt it at other points in your life. So yeah, it's like a feeling that gets activated or triggered in your current, I'm going to speak to this like I'm talking about relationships. So in your current relationship, a feeling that gets activated or triggered that's not new, right? So at some point in your life, you have felt some version of this feeling before. And it is a wound through which you subconsciously have a lens on reality. So some inner child wounds or feelings that could get activated are unwanted, uncared for, feeling unworthy, reactive, resistant, defensive, protective, victimized, shame, guilt, all of those feelings that I just listed, those are all feelings of inner child wounding. Those are some feelings that activate or trigger our inner child wound. So back to my definition. When that feeling gets brought up in present day, it's not a new feeling, and you subconsciously have a lens that you view reality through that let's say someone else doesn't. So for example, if you saw my Instagram stories maybe a few weeks ago, I talked about the time that I was in a thing with my partner, and I started crying, and he was like, oh, you're going to cry about it now. I'm not going to go into that story again. But basically, that's a good example of he was saying that through his lens of his child wounding, which is not good enough. I did it wrong, whatever. And then my childhood wounding of I'm unloved, I'm uncared for is how I heard it, right? So if you have a particular wound, if you have a wound that has you feel like you need to be protective or defensive, you're always going to be viewing, your lens on reality is always going to be, looking for threat, assessing for risk, right? Because that's the wound that you are viewing reality through. If you have a wound, I'll say mine, which is I get activated and triggered if I'm perceiving or thinking or feeling that I'm unloved, uncared for, unwanted, I'm always going to be looking through a lens of like evidence for that, right? So whatever our childhood inner child wound is, our lens on reality is always kind of scanning for it, right? So whether or not, let's say someone is, they feel like they need to defend themselves and protect themselves. So they're always going to be assessing for risks, looking for threats, even where they don't exist, they'll perceive them. Someone like me, my subconscious or unconscious lens view on reality is always going to be scanning for where am I not being loved? Where is someone like not considering me, not loving me, not caring about me? I'm going to be finding evidence for that reality, even if it doesn't exist, right? So that's kind of like the definition and how I'm talking about it here. Okay, so a lot of times in healthy relationships, we feel like we want to run away. And again, I'm going to be talking about this like, like as if men are the ones running away. I'm aware that women run away from relationships too, but my experience is that it's men. So, so oftentimes men want to run away from a good relationship. And but I want to preface this by saying that I'm not talking about relationships that like are bad, toxic, abusive, that like you should genuinely run away from, that you should genuinely try to get out of because they're genuinely harmful to you. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like a normal, good, loving relationship. And it brings up those activations, those triggers. And again, I understand women want to run away from that too often, but I'm just going to talk about men for a second. So he's in a relationship and those feelings get brought up and he wants to run away. Now, two things are going to happen. And the first one is like what we often hear. So like he's going to run away and just continue to play that pattern out, right? Like he's just going to, get into a new relationship, but continue to have those same feelings, have those same triggers. And the reason is because our inner child, the wounds of our inner child, they want to be liberated, right? Like they want to be loved and they want to be healed. So that's why if we have the experience of getting in new relationships, but still having similar triggers over and over, it's because like they're coming to the surface because they want to be liberated, they want to be loved, they want to be healed. Okay. So the first thing is the first possibility is that he gets out of that relationship, because he's like, it's overwhelming, it's too much, I don't want to feel these things. We tend to make the mistake of thinking that it's bad if we feel this way, and I'm going to get more into that in a second. So he leaves that relationship and he's like, I want more ease. I don't want all this, blah, blah, blah. Like, I just want someone who's more easy, who's like less challenging. Now, I need to preface all of this saying, like, if you followed me and my work for a while, then you know that I'm not a proponent of drama. Like, I'm not saying that we should be in relationships where we're like fighting and triggering the shit out of each other all the time. I don't think that either. This is not about being in relationships where we're just always being triggered so we can deal with our inner child stuff. I actually, and I have written about, think that we can be in relationships that are, for the most part, drama-free. And I don't think that we need to, I'm not saying that we should be like fighting and triggering each other all the time. However, I do think that it is the nature of relationship that if one or both people is carrying an inner child wound that has not yet been fully healed and liberated, it is going to get brought up in partnership, and partnership is the greatest opportunity to liberate and to heal it, because that wound happened in relationship and it's going to get healed in relationship. So I'm not saying we should just be, fighting like cats and dogs all the time and have all this drama in our relationship. But what I am saying is that, yeah, like if your relationship is 85, 90% like fun and ease and love and joy and connection and all the good stuff, but there's like 10 or 15% of like tussle where you're working that stuff out in a loving, conscious way, that's normal and that's healthy and that's what you should be doing. And that is what relationship is for. Like if you have stuff, the stuff will come up in relationship inevitably. So that's what I'm saying. Okay, so that man has decided that I don't like the way that feels. That's overwhelming. I don't want to deal with that. So he runs from the relationship. Two things are going to happen. Either, again, like I said, he's just going to get in another relationship and those feelings are going to continue to be like triggered and activated. Or he actually will find someone who doesn't trigger that stuff, who he does deem as like, okay, this is easier. Like they don't, like we don't have those types of like tussles or fights or whatever. Like he gets the thing he wants in that sense, like an easier or less like challenging relationship. But he will very likely, if that's the case, be deeply unsatisfied with like the sexual chemistry component of that relationship. Now, why is that? It's because you can't compartmentalize activation. So if you're with someone and they activate you, then they activate all parts of you. They activate the good stuff, the sexual chemistry and the passion and the fun and all of the good things that we say we want. But they're also going to activate any and all inner child, unhealed parts of you as well. Because again, like you can't compartmentalize activation. Activation is activation. So if you're with a partner that activates you, they're going to activate all of you. Now you can go find a partner that you don't get activated in those, negative, they're not actually negative, but the feelings we don't like. You can find that, but they're probably not going to activate the other, like the other parts of you as well, right? So the mistake that we make is thinking that the bad feeling activations are wrong. And, there's even people that say like, don't get hung up on a guy or don't get hung up on someone like when the D is good or when the sex is good. But like you're in this like toxic relationship and you fight like cats and dogs. And there's even like people who say like, why is the sex so good with like when you're in such a toxic relationship? It's not that is inherently toxic. It's just that we're with someone who activates us, and that's actually a good thing. The thing that makes it toxic is that we're not bringing love and awareness to those inner child wounds that get brought up. So again, like I said, your inner child wants to be liberated. It wants to be healed. That's why it's coming to the surface, like these parts of you that are still young and that are still unintegrated. It's not bad that they get brought up. What's bad is that one or usually both partners are not bringing awareness and love to that part of the other partner. So ideally, what happens is two people come into a relationship with an awareness of their own inner child wound and their partner's inner child wound. So, for example, like I know what is the thought or the feeling that comes over me when I get activated. It's I think or I feel I'm unloved, uncared for, unwanted. So I'm able to identify that and voice it. And then my partner is also able to identify and voice what is the thought or the feeling that comes up for them when they get activated. So ideally, both people can identify what is the thought and feeling that comes up when they get triggered. Like, what is it that they are believing when they get triggered? And then they also know what it is for their partner. So a lot of times, though, one's partner won't be able to necessarily know or identify that. But if you pay close enough attention and hang out with someone long enough, like you'll be able to recognize and see and notice what is going on and what is happening when they get triggered. Like, what is it that they are perceiving and believing right now? If you hang out with someone for long enough, you'll start to see a pattern there. So even if they can't fully understand it or identify or articulate it, if you pay close enough attention, because that's what love is, that's part of what love is understanding another in that way. Like, what is going on for them? Like when they're getting triggered, oh, like they must be feeling threatened because they're getting really defensive, or oh, like they're shutting down, so they must be thinking like that like they're not good enough, like it doesn't matter what they say because it's not going to help any. Like, if you just pay attention, you'll start to see like what's going on for them when they're getting triggered or activated. Okay, so yeah, I think my whole point is basically like, we don't need to demonize these activating relationships. We just have to bring love and awareness to them, because actually activating relationships, that's like really what we all want, right? Like we want someone who activates feelings of love and passion and chemistry. But if we are wanting that, but we're not wanting the other thing, that's just not how it works. So, yeah, like it's not about like being Goldilocks and being like, okay, I want someone who like gives me these things, but not these things. And like, that's just not what it is. Activation is activation. If you're with a partner that activates you, then praise the gods, okay? Because it's an opportunity and it's a person that you have a lot of chemistry with. And that's good. Like chemistry is good. Like being able to feel like you can really connect with the person and be on their level, having really good sex, feeling like you like being around them and that it's like genuinely fun and you enjoy each other's company. These are all things we want. It's very activating in good ways. But because you cannot compartmentalize activation, then what's important is we don't make wrong the other parts of us that these people activate, because it's not that it's wrong. It's that most people aren't bringing love and awareness to their own and their partner's inner child wounding. As soon as we can be like, oh, when I'm getting triggered, it's because I'm believing or perceiving that I'm not being considered right now, that I'm unwanted right now, and I'm unloved right now. And so then you can bring love to that. Ideally, your partner can identify that too. And then same thing with your partner. Like if you're both like, hey, this is what I'm experiencing when I like have this activation. Because here's the thing, when you're triggered, always it's happening inside your body. It's not happening in your partner's body. Unless they're triggered too, then their trigger is happening in their body. But it's as soon as you feel triggered, if you can just pull out a little bit, and I know it's hard because it's like, it really feels like they did something and now you're triggered, right? So if you can just pull out a little bit and just say to yourself, like, I'm the one that's experiencing this activation right now. Like the feelings that are happening in my body. What is the belief that's causing it? The belief is I need to protect myself. I need to defend myself. I'm not being seen. I'm not being loved. I'm not being heard. Like, what is the belief? And then you can be like, well, is that true? Or you can check in with your partner and say, whatever. Like there's a whole process. Or maybe it's not a process. Sometimes if you can just identify it and pull back a little bit, you can just do it yourself and be like, oh, like I'm telling myself a story right now that they don't care about me. Well, I know that that's not true. So if that's not true, if I know my partner cares about me, then what might be happening instead right now? I get that when you're in the moment, it's hard to do that. But if you can just learn to take like a second of a pause while you're in that triggered state, just long enough to identify that it's happening in your body, then you can begin to maybe ask yourself some of these questions as it's happening. Or if you just tell yourself, when I'm triggered, I'm just gonna like pause and just stop. Like that's it. I'm just gonna stop when I'm triggered so that I have the time to be like, what is actually happening and what is going on. And then maybe you can come back to the conversation later or whatever. This video is not really about like the process or like how to handle the trigger per se. That's something I more do or help people with in a one-on-one setting, because we can really like dial in and zero in on their unique, because it's all unique, right? Like what triggers me doesn't trigger you, and vice versa. So in a more one-on-one setting, I'm able to really zero in and say like, you know, and help them kind of work through their particular triggers, like what's actually going on with you, what's happening for you, what are you believing when this comes up. So this video is not really about like how to work through triggers. It's more of saying like, we don't need to make them wrong. Like when we are activated, that's good. It's what do we bring to the activation? Do we make it wrong? Do we judge it? Do we say like, this is too much, I don't want to deal with it, this is bad, it shouldn't be this way? Or do we bring love and awareness to it? Because again, if you're in a relationship that activates the good things, you're going to be in a relationship that also activates the bad things. I don't like to call them the bad things because they're not actually bad. They might be uncomfortable at times. But again, they're coming up because they want to be liberated. They want to be loved. And you can either run away from that and just go do it with somebody else, or you could be with someone that doesn't activate you. And maybe that's not wrong, but I do believe that like there will be parts of that relationship that feel like really unfulfilling and unsatisfying, because again, ultimately, like our souls want that. Like we want to heal the hurt parts of us. Like we want to liberate those parts of us. So I think that's all I have to say. If you are curious to work with me, if you're curious about any of my other like courses or videos or teachings, you can go to my Instagram. You can reach out to me via DM or email asking about one-on-one, and I'll leave all of that stuff in the description below. Okay, bye.